Welcome to Spain Perspectivas. How you doing, Tanya?
I'm doing okay. We are in the throes of FIAS and festivals, which is creating a lot of fun in many different ways. How about you?
I would agree, and so far, and this is not it's not a opinion. It is fact. It has been a very quiet Faya start so far. We had a huge party weekend, but
Mm,
during the week, there's kids and the people aren't throwing the firecrackers that we're used to. Now, granted, I know come Friday and next week it will be insane. But I remember years past, the last
yeah.
three, the first, all 3 weeks, you're like pop, 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 and we
Yeah.
haven't been hearing that during the
Well,
week.
I
So
do want to make a little correction on something you said. Not your fault, because you had mentioned, which is awesome, that they have a rule that the pops are not supposed to happen during certain hours for
mhm.
pets, right?
Yeah, well, that's what people said. It's for
This
pets.
is
Yeah.
not abided by.
Mhm.
I just want to say that for them from over here where we are. Like, so there is so it's, I mean, it
Oh,
is
you mean it
true.
might be for the city, but it's not for your
No, no,
little
no. It
town.
is for the Valencia community, I found out. Like, it's not just for the city, but
Oh,
it
okay.
is not being abided by and nobody's like monitoring it. So if a kid wants to throw something at during those hours, that's what happens because we've been monitoring those hours to see if we can take Blaze out during that time. It just doesn't
Hmm.
matter. like
Well, maybe you need to bring Blaze into the city because
it's actually happening.
it's been working at least in our neighborhood. Now, outside of our hood, I can't tell you, but
Right, but
we
because you're in the city, it might be different because you
right.
might have some little enclaves in different places that are generally a little quieter, where the main things maybe aren't happening. But because we're in a small town, it's kind of hard, right? And if the kids are out of
Right.
school, so we like next week's gonna be madness. But if the kids are in school, that's the safest time basically to do
Right. Right.
it. So this, I don't know if my Ospain is related to this, but I don't think it is. I'll try and make this short. I have a Spain from my experience because
That
this is
doesn't sound pleasurable. Sounds a
okay.
little.
I don't know if it's like I'm just jinxing it or whatever, but it's like this used to happen to me when I lived in DC as well, which is that if I decided to take the train instead of taking the car, it would take
Hmm.
forever. And I would be like, this is why I don't take the train because I'm sitting in a tunnel for 25 minutes and then the next tunnel another 25 minutes because it's like I'm going in off hours or something and I'm stuck,
Or
right?
there just happens to be the one day there's a
Right.
quirk is the day you decide to save the planet.
Always, right? So then
Right.
I'm not saving the planet anymore.
Right.
So we went into the city, and because now we can take a train, we took the train in. Great, it was fabulous. So nice, really, just to jump on a train, be in the city, and be
Hmm.
able to just walk to both stations and get the stuff that we wanted done. We go back to the main train station, the Norte train station, to come home, and we have a train. They go about every 20 minutes or so, or
20, 30 minutes, yeah.
sometimes 20,
Hmm.
30 minutes, 35 minutes or something. And
Depending on the hour. Yeah.
sometimes a little bit further in between because where we are is not like a main stop. We're kind of on the slower route, like train stops anyway. So we get there, and the train that we have to take home in order to get home before Zena gets home, suddenly, which has never happened, is cancelled,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
And I'm like, so that's never happened. And it's like 3:30. And the next train, because that was going to be at 3:50, we were there a little early. The next train was going to be 4:20 or something. And I'm like,
Okay.
that's almost an hour. And Juwan and I had been talking about we can also take the metro out to the very end, almost to the end of one of the lines, and they have a
Hmm.
bus going from the metro station to our town, which
Okay.
is a relatively new thing, and everyone was super excited about it. So I was like, well, maybe now's the time to test it, right? That sense. I mean,
Right.
we've got an hour
I mean, this
before
sounds
the
like a positive story. You're heading in
right.
the right
And I
direction.
was so
Yeah.
excited. It was like, Spain, we have so many options now of how to get home, and we're excited. And so we go like because I'm like, it's going to be an hour before the train goes, and it's going to take half an hour, 45 minutes on the train. So we might as well give this other thing a shot. We get to our stop. We get on the metro, which is right outside the train station. We get to our stop. We get off. We get to the bus stop where the bus is going to pick us up. I'm like, this is going
Hmm.
so well, right?
Right.
What could possibly go wrong? We're waiting at the bus stop. All the instructions on the bus stop about our bus, the time schedule. It's the winter, so they have a slightly diminished schedule. So we
Okay.
have to wait another like half an hour for the bus to show up. That's fine. Okay, it's the winter. They'll have more
Was
buses in
there
the
at least
summer.
a shop you could buy a soda water in or something?
No,
Or
because now it's like 4:30.
oh, you're at the we're not open for business yet.
No, we're
You
now in
missed us.
siesta time.
Yeah. Well, not siesta time. You're in their siesta time,
Their
right? Because the
siesta
restaurants
time.
are open during siesta.
Right. They were open. I don't know if you would have got food. You probably could have got a coffee. But we
Right.
decided to just wait at the bus stop anyway. I mean, it was kind of a nice day. And then it started like to drizzle a little bit, but only like nothing. And then it stopped. So we're like, we're just going to sit here. Then a regular bus comes like 20 minutes late. And I asked him, like, is this other bus, like, is it on schedule or whatever? And he's like, oh, it doesn't go from here anymore.
But the sign was there. The
Oh,
sign
everything's there.
said
The sign, the schedule, everything. And he's like, no. And but he was so nice. And this was the like Spain part. He's like, oh, come on, jump on the bus. It's free. Don't worry about it. I'll show you where you need to get it from because now it's over there and I go past there. Super, right?
Okay.
So nice, super nice guy. So we get on the bus and as we go, he can only stop at his stop. So we go around and he says, you have to come back here and stand on here at this corner and you just flag the bus down when it comes.
like hailing a cab.
Like hailing a cab. So now apparently this bus has no bus stop. So he drops us off, very nice, and we come back to where we're supposed to stand. The bus never shows up. Like we're just standing there. And eventually we're just like, at this point now it's like 4:45, right?
Okay.
Zena's already made it home. Luckily she can walk home from school now, thank goodness. So she's already home and
she's made dinner.
That's exactly what she wants. And he's like, can she start dinner? Because I'm getting hungry. And then, so I was like, we just need to walk. We should have started walking like 45 minutes ago, but this bus is never coming. And we have to walk the route anyway. So and since it's a flag down bus, let's just walk, right?
Right.
We're just going to flag this bus down whenever we see it.
So did you have to walk all the way home then?
We walked all the way home.
Yep. Did the bus ever pass you?
We saw the bus coming into town at exactly the same time as us. We would have saved 0 time. We walked 45 minutes because that was the walk, which was fine. It was a nice walk if I had been planning to do that. You know what I mean? Like I don't
think you weren't wearing heels. I mean, I hope you weren't wearing heels.
Not, thank God, because can you imagine? So we saw the bus. So I don't know. I still have to go down to the city and talk to them and be like, what on earth? Like this should not. It is a 7-minute bus. So we should have been passed by at least 2 buses, right?
And the city will probably say, well, yeah, we went to the little cafe 2 weeks ago and told 4 people. So you should know by now. It should have spread around your little town.
And we've talked about this a little bit before. This is definitely one of those things where it's quite hard sometimes in Spain to be not in the loop of a network of Spanish people because things do just get told around, I think, a lot.
Yeah. And you're expected to know.
So that was our experience. And both Joad and I, we're never doing this again. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm never doing this again. We're going to stick to the train and not do the metro.
Right. Well, speaking of in the know, since this is a Perspectivas episode, we have a wonderful interview coming up with Andrew Anderson, who is with Vote From Abroad, who is going to give us a ton of information. And
it's very important to vote from abroad and get yourself registered. And he is going to tell us exactly how to do that. And he's a very informative person. So I'm sure a whole bunch of other information as well.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Enjoy the interview.
Enjoy.
Hi, Andrew. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks very much. I appreciate the invitation.
So our listeners already know. We've already introduced you before this interview started. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here in Spain versus
Very good.
You said you're from Vote From Abroad. So why don't you elaborate on that for us?
Sure. So just real quick, my wife and I have been here in Spain roughly 5 years. We've decided to make Spain our home after 40 years in Washington, D.C. Both my wife and I were career, if you will, institutionalists. I came from the government. My wife came from the International Monetary Fund. Okay. And when we retired, my wife wanted to move to Europe, and so we chose Spain. So within that context, once I retired from the federal government, and to be honest with you, I worked for 4 presidents, to
Wow.
include Trump one, and I left under Biden, which was probably the right thing to do. I had a 30-year career in national security where I was actually working along the southern border and the northern border of the United States on national security issues.
Hmm.
So when I retired, I knew that I wasn't going to sit still. So when I got into Spain, I started to get involved with different activities, particularly Democrats Abroad, which you probably heard about before. So Democrats Abroad here in Spain and globally, it's about 180 countries that we're in, represent really the American people in reference to a couple of things. One is kind of the democratic agenda that's out there in America and the United States abroad. And second is registering people, Americans, to register to vote, which is important because your vote does count when you go back, when you vote back in the United States. So the vote from abroad, which is what you talked about earlier, is the instrument to which we use to help Americans abroad in every country that Americans reside, to
Hmm.
help register to vote through their state so they can vote at the federal, state, and local election. Now, now again, depending on how the American individual has left the United States, meaning that they leave for good in the sense that they're not going to be able to vote at the state and local level because they sold all their
Hmm.
properties, then they can vote at the federal level. Or if guys like me and my wife, we still own property and we have family back in the United States, I can vote all the way down to city council. So I can go
Right.
from the federal level to that. But I use vote from abroad. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a spiel about me.
So, also from Washington, D.C., by the way. So, I don't know if we ever met there, but probably not. You know, past each other, I'm sure. But it's very, when I first moved here, I wasn't really sure how to vote from abroad. And I think it's really, really important. Now I've been here 5 years, I have figured it out. But I think it's important that you have so much to do when you move to another country, as I think we can all understand. And it's important to get yourself registered. If you could sort of give somebody a little bit of a guideline on how you actually do that without having to go back to the States to do it, if you have a kind of a cheat sheet, I guess.
Yeah, happy to help you with that. So a couple. There's 2 vehicles. One is, which is the most probably for the audience that's listening to us today, the best thing to do is to go to democratsabroad.org, and there's a link there by country. So if you're listening in Germany, if you're listening in Spain, if you're listening in France, or wherever that podcast is reaching out to, you can literally go out to that website and actually find the country that you're in. And under that country, there will be a link that's called Vote From Abroad.org. So votefromabroad.org. When you get into that link, it literally will walk you through how to register by your state and the requirements to register for your state while abroad, which is really good. If there's any questions that you may have and you need some help, the democratsabroad.org by country have volunteers ready to help you because they've been trained to literally help a person go from A through Z on their registration to vote, how to vote, when to vote, and we actually put down, if you will, timetables for their states, for their primaries, and for their elections. So there's a real good set of rich resources available for individuals that are coming abroad now. So, for example, I'm surprised that you and I did not cross paths because Washington D.C. is a very small town.
It is.
And,
But
and
I did not work in the government, so that's probably
okay, and
why.
that's probably yeah. But I had a lot of contractors too. At that point in time, a lot of contractors worked for me. But
Yeah.
who knows? We may have crossed paths. We may have been in meetings somewhere along the line. Um, because really, after 40 years, you figure you're going to run into somebody at some point.
You've
But
met everybody then.
that's right. Well, hopefully, well, you never know. But to answer the question, I hope I answered the question as honestly as I could. So if people are and people that are listening and saying, well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with democratsabroad.org. I respect that and I understand that. So the other way to do that is actually just go out to the website called votefromabroad.org. And in that link, as you get into it, it'll actually start to walk you through it. But if you have problems or concerns, please reach back to Democrats Abroad because we got volunteers trained to help you how to get through some of the obstacles. And some of the obstacles that people have gotten in the way of is, for example, just to give you an example, what I've heard, and I've experienced, is an American will go abroad, and let's say they come to Spain and they've been here about 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and then all of a sudden they say, well, I sold everything, so I have nothing to do with America. Well, no, that's not true. And here's why. You're still tax liable unless you renounce your citizenship, which you don't want to do because there's a heavy penalty. So therefore, you're still eligible to vote at the federal level. So understand that. And then how do I do that? Through the website and through the volunteer help.
So I have a question. If someone, so you've mentioned Democrats abroad and vote from abroad, but what if, is that only for Democrats, or can independents and Republican people who are registered or have been registered as Republicans and independents, can they still utilize vote from abroad?
Great question. And the answer is yes. If you're a Republican, a independent, agnostic, a Democrat, whatever that may be, the whole idea of votefromabroad.org is to give the American the opportunity to register to vote through their state for either a federal, state, local election. And so it's irrespective of party, which I think is really valuable. And I will share with you as the chair of the Democrats Abroad.org Spain, as the country chair, I have opened up the doors to Republicans that no longer like what they see and do. We embrace them. Independents that are looking for a home, and Democrats that are a little bit delusional but want to come back to the fold. We're here to help. Our job is to make sure you are registered to vote so your voice counts back home. It's critical. It's imperative. Why? Let me give you a statistic, or let me give you a data point. The data point is that in total numbers of Americans abroad, we roughly represent 5.5 to 9 million Americans abroad globally, to which when
Wow.
we register to vote, we are the size of the state of New Jersey. So,
Wow.
so imagine the magnitude of that, which is roughly, think about anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5 million Americans that register to vote from abroad, wherever they are abroad,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to impact their local elections or the federal election in 2028 and in 2026 for the midterms.
Yeah, and when you think about the fact that a lot of people don't vote, it's not you're not this percentage isn't against everybody in America. It's against the amount of people that are actually voting in America, which isn't as much as we would like.
Right.
And I will say, I love the process. Sounds very easy. I've done it. It's incredibly easy. And I will say, the first couple of years I was here, I was so overwhelmed with all these things I was trying to do. I didn't forget, but I was like, oh, I don't want to get into it. It's going to be such a drag. It's going to be difficult. I'm going to have to go back to the state, whatever. It was so easy. Obviously, they're checking everyone's credentials, and it's done very professionally and properly, and it's done through your home state. So it's not some organization that's like registering people. Like, you're helping people register with their home state. Like, I want to make that very clear, that you are
Very good.
registering with where you would have registered before. You're just having somebody help you figure out how to do that from abroad. And it's incredibly easy. And the nice thing is, you will get notifications for the next, the elections, in case you're not quite up on it. Like, don't forget to vote again. Like, don't forget to register again and make sure you get your ballot. And it's very easy. Can you give us a little bit of details of how people get their ballots and how that works, and getting your vote back in, the sort of the end part of it?
Sure, happy to do that. The answer to the question is it all depends because each state has a different requirement. And I'll give you a living example. State of Virginia, which I am a registered voter in the state of Virginia. So I'm eligible to vote in the state of Virginia all the way down to the local level, and even in primaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what ends up happening is that the Office of Elections will send me an email to say, you're eligible to vote. Here's your ballot. Please download your ballot and follow the instructions. And so when we follow the instructions, you have to follow the instructions very clearly and then be able to mail it back. So that's one way of doing it. In other states, they do it electronically, meaning that you can do an electronic vote. So that means you don't have to mail anything back. So the answer to the question is, if you come from a state, look at the state requirements of what the ballot return requirements are. They could be electronic, they could be mail formed, There could be another form. And you need to know that in order to be able to get your vote in on time. Because again, and each state has a different marker. So for example, the state of Virginia, as long as my package is stamped the day of the election and it gets back 10 days later, it's still counted as a vote. Other states will not count that because they're saying, no, that's outside the frame. But the only way you're going to be able to know that, and the only way to get that answer is to go to vote from abroad and look at your state and the requirements within for your ballot.
Right. So I have a question too. Is two questions actually. One, do you have to register every year because you live abroad, or is it like once you're registered, it doesn't change, or should you at least check every year to make sure you're still registered?
Great question. The answer to the question is you have to re-register every year. In the begin so and I will share with you that with our organization, what we do is we have what they call the ground game messaging that starts in December and goes through January 15th, to where we send out to our membership, and we try to do a broad broadcast to a lot of Americans, that you are required to re-register your position of where you're at in order to be able to be considered a registered voter in your state. And you
Okay.
do that through Vote from Abroad.
Yeah, and I did that. I'm also in Virginia, so I will say that's also very easy once you've done it once. It does feel easier. I don't know if I'm doing the same process again. I can't really remember. It's been too long and I have no memory, but it's easy. It really is.
And good to
And
know because I didn't know it was every year. So I'm glad I asked that question, and
Yes.
I know what I'm doing once we get offline is
all
I
right.
go to California and say, please let me back. I know there's probably different deadlines for different states, but is there general deadlines that people should be worrying about to make
Well,
sure they're registered, to make sure they vote, they get their ballots, at least for
yeah,
federal level?
right. At the federal level, we have distinct markers, right? So for example, and let's just go for the midterms, right? Because that's the most important piece right now that we have.
Hmm.
So right now, our organization is actually messaging out, and I've made it a clear criteria that we're messaging out beyond our membership. Okay, we our membership, by the way, right now exceeds over 6,000 members in Spain alone. Okay,
Hmm.
but in the last kind of census that we took in October of last year, there were roughly 42,500 Americans and growing in all of Spain. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, so if you think about the numbers, right, we're not there. So my objective is to get message out to all Americans. I don't care what party you're with, all Americans, to make sure that you do two things: that you've registered to vote. Second, that you understand that you've got to have your ballots in by the required time frame for the first Tuesday in November for the midterms, which is the marker, right? Which is our
Hmm.
dead marker. So we're looking at probably between September and the middle of yeah, the no, September to the middle of October, to make sure that you have done all of your one, twos, and threes to make sure that your ballots are in state.
Is there a registration deadline that people should make sure? I mean, I know yesterday and today are the perfect deadlines to have been registered, but is there a certain cutoff date that if you're not registered by this point, you're not going to get your ballot?
Yeah, usually it's probably 90 days before the election.
So by
So
midsummer, everyone should make sure they are.
highly recommended and correct. You're right. There's going to be some lags. Some people wait until September, but it's okay. But
Mhm.
again, it's best to get it in as in on time or close to on time, so that way your ballot is inbound into the state, your state, to be counted. Now,
Right.
there has been some discussions, and again, let's talk about this honestly. From people living in Spain are concerned of the mail system. It takes anywhere between 5 to 10 days to get back to the U.S. Right,
Hmm.
regular mail kind of thing. And if you have to mail your ballot in, you got to take that into account. So you
Hmm.
need to take that and count backwards. So say, okay, if I got to have it in by September the 30th, I need to back up 10 days. So by the middle of September, I need to have my ballot all done. And if I have to mail it in, mail it in. If I'm doing it by email, because there's some states that ballot by email, then do it by the time they tell you is the end date, which I think is probably 10 days before election day, because they
Mhm.
have to be able to account for the email count.
Yeah, and the
It,
good thing is once you're registered and once you're sort of in any kind of system for registering yourself, you will be getting notifications. No, it's not a crazy amount, but you will be getting notifications saying, you need to do this by now. And for people that are like, I think Gaetani made a good point. By midsummer, by the end of
Yep.
summer, exactly, you should be registered. So if you're like listening to this and it's really, really hot and you're feeling hot and you're at the beach and you haven't registered to vote yet, do it today.
Love it. I love it. You guys are wonderful. You guys are actually selling it better than I can. So I appreciate that.
No, you
And
have to. I mean, it's very,
yeah,
very, it's a very important thing. And I'm going to be honest, it took me a couple of years to get it together. And that's not who I think I am, but it is who I was. So
right.
I'm really glad that we could have you come and give us some sort of real information on how to get it done, because I couldn't articulate it that well.
No, thank you.
I
I
will say
appreciate it.
I come from California, and I did register for the election in 2024, and the process was really easy. I, however, am not an expert to talk about it because raising two kids, I don't remember anything from 2 years
Right.
ago. That's by design. So I definitely couldn't tell people how to do it, but I remember it being very easy to do the California. They made it very easy, and so anyone from California, it's easy. Go to votefromabroad.org. They'll let you know how easy it was, but it was not anything to be scared of. I just didn't know I had to do it every year, so it's good to know.
That is
Right.
good.
Yeah, it is really, really good to know. And I think that the bottom line on all this thing is that I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to communicate out to the broader audience that we have, right? We have a lot of Americans that are inbound into Spain, particularly. And if I can give you another data point, the three largest American communities outside the United States is Canada number one, Mexico number two, England number three, Germany number four because of the large military presence as well.
Mhm.
Um, Five is France, and we're number six. So Spain is up there in
Mhm.
relative terms to the global picture. The top 10, the top six, we're in the top six as far as Americans abroad that need to be registered to vote and be participatory of our elections back home because we do impact the decisions. We really do. And a lot of people right now feel uh, I think there's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of angst of what's going on, which I can completely understand because of what's going on all over in the United States as far as what's happening domestically versus what's happening internationally. And I think the fact that people want to do something, this podcast is helping to say there is an opportunity. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you can do that, and be part of that, but be part of the solution, if you will.
Well, that brings up another question I have is how can people get involved outside of voting? Does Votes from Abroad, Democrats Abroad, do you know of, or other organizations that you're not related to where people can feel like they're making a difference and they're involved and they're helping with the process of anything? Do you have? Yeah.
Well, and like you said, like getting the word out more, like obviously very important. You haven't nearly reached the limit of who's here.
That's right. So yeah. So to answer your question, is there are several groups that are starting to really kind of starting to motor up in reference to getting people involved in different aspects of um, what can I do to help to make a change, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the proper way to do it. The Democrats Abroad is one. You can join the organization because we have chapters in Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, Alicante, Sevilla, and Grenada. I have two precincts that are in, oh, I can't remember the two names of the precincts. Aragon is one. Precincts meaning they're not quite chapters because they're not as big yet. They're 25 plus. And we just started to create one in Tarragona. I didn't realize that there was a big community in Tarragona. So apparently
Mm-hmm.
that's coming up and coming. And I also have a northern Spain from Galicia to the Basque Country, where we're creating a group of Americans up there. And what we're doing is we're creating, for example, we have greet and meets. We're actually doing protests in the big cities, and that's
Mm-hmm.
coming. There's one coming up that you can get involved in. In Valencia, they're doing a couple things in reference to kind of articulating some get-togethers so that people feel like they're part of a solution, not part of the problem. So
Mm-hmm.
there's real opportunity there. There's another couple groups. There's the American Society, the Madrid American Society up in Madrid. That's kind of a membership group, and they're doing some things to kind of coalesce around what can they do to kind of write to Congress or write to your senators and be involved in that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's also money giving, fundraising, if you will, so we
Mm-hmm.
can communicate out to the broader American community how to get involved and what they can do to start to register to vote.
Now you made a really good point about writing to your senators and stuff. You can do that from Spain. You are voting.
Exactly.
You are registered. You are an American. I know I don't sound like one, but I am also an American, and and you can still do those types of things that are necessary from here. So I think that was a very good point to bring up, that some of these organizations are helping, maybe helping people kind of re-realize the things that they're able to do and participate as well.
Correct. Yeah, I think if you vote, if you listen, if your listeners are listening, if you will, there's the opportunity to get involved and do something is there. Just
Okay.
because you left the United States doesn't mean you're not part of the United States. You're always going to be an American. And the question becomes is how much do you want to get involved in being an American abroad? And you can do it at any level and at all levels.
And I think it's important that you brought up that we still have to pay taxes. We are still Americans unless we renounce our citizenship. So just because we've moved far away does not mean what happens in our motherland doesn't affect us every day,
Correct.
because we are
Absolutely.
paying taxes. It is going to things we want or not want. It does affect where our money, it affects interest rates. Even if you're like, I don't know, there are so many ways it affects your life. That's not political. That is financial. That is however you want to look at it, right? So I think it is important people reminding that voting is important. I've grown up my whole life knowing that and hearing that, and it's drilled into my brain that you have to vote. Like that, you don't get to complain if you didn't cast a ballot, is what I was taught as a little boy.
That's a
That's
great,
basic.
yeah. That is perfect. That's really perfect. But I think your point is really, really good, and I hope your listeners can hear this as well. Is remember that most of the Americans that come abroad are early retirees, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them depend on Social Security as part of their income base to live comfortably, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
guess what? Things back home are going to impact you one way or the other. So why not get involved? Why not register to vote? Why not be part of the solution versus the problem? You can't ignore it. And I
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
think the most recent impact to all of us, if you will, is the exchange rate.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm feeling that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so imagine the fact that because we have a government in place right now that is doing everything they can to make it very difficult for people for some reason, instead of making it the other way, you're feeling it. When the exchange rate goes from 125 to 119 to 118, it affects your ability to buy and live. And
Mm-hmm.
so being involved really helps. And registering to vote and voting has consequences. And I think it's a positive one.
Yeah, and I love that. I didn't realize you were so widespread around Spain. That's amazing. And I would imagine, like you said, because of the amount of people coming, that might also increase. So it's nice for people, I think, to know that no matter where they are in Spain, they can participate in your organization and help. And maybe if they're in another area that doesn't have one, they can start a little precinct or something. I'm assuming that would be allowed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, go back to the original premise of my discussion to you is that we are here to help Americans register to vote and be part of the American process because we are Americans, irrespective of where we live in this world.
And
And,
and
I-
I would
and
like to say that we do have global outreach with this podcast. So this interview is for the world, not just for Americans in Spain. Vote from
Excellent,
abroad, like you said, is worldwide.
Yeah, so no
exactly.
matter where you are, go find a place to there's gonna be a vote from abroad or something like it somewhere near you if you need help. So do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And well said. I couldn't have said it better.
Well, unless, I mean, if you have something else to add, I think we've got an incredible amount of information from you, which I've learned a few things as well. And we just really appreciate you sharing this information, which I think will be incredibly helpful to many people, whether they're in Spain or not.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for your time, Andrew.
You're more than welcome, and thank you both for what you're doing in reference to the general podcast about Spain, which I think is great, but also the fact we're able to communicate to the American public, wherever they may be in this world, that they are a vested member of our community back home as well as our community abroad.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Well, like I said, that was a pretty informative interview, don't you think, Tanya?
It was. I actually always learn some things from our interviews. So I just, when you talk to people like that know so much more. I mean, I've done it and I know a little bit, but like he said, every state is different. Like all these things you don't think about, that you have to do. And so please, everybody.
I mean, I never knew about having to register every year because when I was in California, you just registered once. Unless you moved, you didn't change. And, we brought about this is in the interview that this is for worldwide, but we have a lot of Americans that aren't registered. So if you're listening and you aren't registered, please register.
And also for the next time, like I registered the first time and that had to be done and send all my information. But the next time I just got an email that just said, basically click this to send all your information again.
To say you're still there.
So it's not like you have to go, and it's not even a big process to start with, but it's not like you have to, you do have to register each time, but it's not like it's really not difficult. So
you're just basically renewing it versus starting over.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So very exciting. And I hope everybody does it ASAP.
Well, until the next time you got to vote.
Well, you know what? We might repost this or resend out this episode sort of closer to the time as well.
Or maybe have him come back because there might be some new information of things that people need to know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, hasta luego.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Our Spain.
We really appreciate all the support we have received since we started this podcast.
Visit ourspain.com for transcripts to this and our other episodes, some exciting merchandise, and if you are so inclined, there is also a link to buy us a coffee, which helps support this fun endeavor.
And please follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Our Spain Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening.
It really helps us stay connected, and we'd love to hear from you.
Let us know if there's any topics you would like for us to talk about. Even though we are happy to talk about anything, we also want to make sure it's informative for you.
Exactly.